Coming up on Booth Review, I'm Bram Weinstein. This is now a person known as Big Fletch.
That's me. I'm going to let you know what it feels like to be an undrafted rookie trying to make a ball club.
And how about Jaden Daniels getting set for the regular season? And Drake May, who we saw last night, looked pretty good.
He did look pretty good. Big Fletch loves the energy and the excitement and the intensity that you're going to get with Booth Review.
And we'll talk about what Dan Quinn is bringing here in Ashburn in that energy and intensity. It's all coming up right now. Welcome into the first official edition of the Booth Review podcast with my man, London Fletcher. I'm Bram Weinstein. We spend our Sundays, in the case of the preseason, our Sunday nights in the booth together every single week. And I'm psyched to do this with you on Mondays to kind of pick your brain about what we saw on Sundays. And in this case, get ready for the regular season.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. This is an opportunity for us to kind of debrief the game that we just called. And I'll tell you what, man, people ask me all the time, like, for a former player, what's it like being in the booth? I say, man, unless you're like coaching, the next best thing to me is calling a game. And to be able to call a game for the team that you played for, and cheer for, I don't think it gets much better. So I love my job. Let's just get that out there.
And for me, it's like it's the closest thing I could have to being in it.
Yeah,
because I feel like I'm in it. And I never was in it like you, but I feel like it. And that's why we can't do this after the game. We're both too charged up. Like, we have to wait until the next day to actually talk about it, to think about it, like, take a breath for a second. Because we both walk out of there, and you're so wired after the whole thing happens. It's impossible to really think about it.
So you started doing the games 2 years prior to I came on board.
Yep.
Your first game, were you like mentally exhausted? Like just
yes.
Like, cause my first game, I was like, man, I'm exhausted. Like, and mine was the Jacksonville game. We ended up winning that game. I mean,
in the regular season.
Yeah, the regular season.
Right, that was the one.
Jahan had the 2 touchdown catches and I was exhausted. Like man, I put so much into this game.
Yeah, so mine was weird, because my first game calling for the team was during the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
So we were in the stadium against Philadelphia, but nobody was there.
Yeah.
So, and then all of our road games were done off a television screen because we weren't traveling with anybody. And I can't tell you how strange it is to call a game without the crowd there. It's dystopian. And then we had never done it before together. So there's all the nerves of that happening.
Yes.
And we didn't have a preseason, remember? They canceled the preseason. So we didn't even have the preseason games to kind of warm up and do it. So that was weird. So I always feel like that experience has left me with, no matter what happens, I'll be ready for it, because there'll be nothing like that. But to your point about being exhausted, I don't sleep the night before games, and I rarely sleep the night after them.
The adrenaline.
There's so much going on prep-wise. I just want to be right. I want to remember everything. You want to recall things at the right time, so you can't sleep. And then the night after, I'm so wired that I literally can't go to bed after they're over. And I am exhausted, and I think of it on Monday as like almost like an information dump, where everything that I worked on all week to get ready to call the game, I have to let go of it, because next week's coming. And in this case, it's like, thank God I don't have to think about the third stringers of the Patriots anymore. I can start thinking about the actual starters of the Buccaneers.
I couldn't imagine for you the type of prep. You think about 90-man rosters in the preseason for both teams, and you're the play-by-play guy having to call these guys' names on both teams. Like, it's one thing to know our roster, because we've been around these guys all off season. You get accustomed to those guys, but you mentioned the Patriots and last night's game too. Like, man, I got to know. And then there's a couple moments where it's a guy who was added late to the roster, and you may not have.
It was the Jets. I think it was either the Jets or the Dolphins. There was a guy that wasn't even on the roster.
Yeah,
that caught a pass. Like, who's that guy? Yeah. Who's that guy?
That guy caught a pass.
Yeah. So that's where we fake it. If you ever hear me never say a name, it's because it's not on the card in front of me. And it's always the other team. I got no excuses for our team. But it's always on the other team.
A lot of times, I'm waiting on you to say that guy's name. So, because I'm looking, I'm like, okay, and I'm listening for you to say that guy's name. But, man, I love it. This is the best job I can't wait to see what we are able to do with this podcast.
Yeah, I want to recap preseason with you here a little bit as we get set for Tampa Bay. We'll have another show next week to really get set for the regular season, where I think we could focus in on what I think is the biggest issue, not issue about the team. It's I don't really know what I'm about to see either side of the ball, and you got no more answers to that last night against New England because they barely played any of the people that we're going to see against Tampa Bay.
That's a good thing. That's a great thing if you're Dan Quinn and the coaches, whether it's Cliff Kingsbury, Joe Wood Jr., and just the team in general, because they have the element of the unknown. Think about this. You've been here watching several practices in training camp, preseason, and you've seen a lot of practice. During training camp, I think you was here every day that you were allowed to be there.
It's the only way I can call a game.
Imagine what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coaching staff is going through, trying to figure out what type of offense are they going to run? What type of defense are we going to run? What's from a special team standpoint, what are they going to be? So you don't know exactly what we'll bring to the table come week one again down in Tampa, and that's the great thing about having a new coaching staff. You have the ability to hold everything close to the vest, and come week one, you're able to kind of unleash that style that you want to play.
You know, it was interesting a couple weeks ago when we went down to Miami for the joint practice, and I'm watching them, and they're not doing that. They're running their system.
Yes.
And, and theirs is kind of unique. If you watch McDaniel, they're an execution machine, and I feel like if you're going to run this, you kind of just have to do it. There's no way around that. And they were running all these different blitz packages. Cliff Kingsbury talked about it. Jaden Daniels talked about it afterwards, and I'm watching them, and I'm going, I actually hope that in 2-3 years, we're them, where we're at the point where we're so confident in what we do, we're not going out of our way to hide anything that we're doing. We're just saying we're going to practice what we do, deal with it, because Miami they can do that. They're the number one offense in the league. Why in the world would they have to try to hide what they're doing? In Washington's case, this is all new, and it's an advantage early this season.
Major advantage. You got to think about this. Mike McDaniels, he's now in his third year as the head coach, I believe, third year as the head coach in Miami. So people know what their offense is. They know how they're going to be. Anthony Weaver, the new defensive coordinator in Miami, he came from Baltimore. So they know what type of system he's going to bring with them from Baltimore. You can go and you'll watch in preparation. I don't know who the Dolphins' first game is against. They'll study all of Baltimore's defensive film from a year ago and look at their pressure packages, their coverages. That's what got Anthony Weaver hired, was that scheme that they ran in Baltimore. So they don't need to necessarily hide anything because people know this is going to be the 80% of their offense, 80% of their defense. You pretty much know. Now, there will be wrinkles or unscouted type plays that happen in every single game. There'll be some things that, whether you've been Andy Reid and been in the place for 10 years or you're Cliff Kingsbury or Dan Quinn, and this is your first year here in Washington, there will be things that you put into your game plan that the other team has no idea this is going to be a part of your offensive game plan or your defensive game plan.
I always find in the NFL, the first month is typically very up and down. It's hard to tell who's good and who isn't. I think some of this is this. Because there's so much roster change, and in the case of Washington, a ton. It's a complete turnover of the roster. I think it's hard to know where people are. And then in the case of Washington, they're going to have to show everybody what they're doing. Week 1, week 2, the film will be out. After a month, then we see what the adjustments are to what this team is going to do and what they're going to be.
And you're still learning your team. Whether established teams or not, every team, Kansas City, just use them for an example again, even though they're the defending Super Bowl champion, this is a new team, so they'll have to figure out what are the strengths of their football team, what are the weaknesses of their football team, what's their identity of the 24 Kansas City Chiefs going to be. In our case, you won't really know what the true identity of this offense, this defense, and this team in general probably to week 8.
Yes.
Because they'll still be learning, okay, this is kind of where we want to be from a personnel standpoint. This is kind of how we want to attack teams. And within that, there'll still be tweaks and, things along the way and adjustments that you make. So a lot of it's kind of just figuring your brand of football, your style of play, and what suits your team and gives you the best opportunity to win football games.
I think with Kansas City and some of the teams that are extremely successful, people like point to Pat Mahomes and they're like, well, and he's great, and I like nothing against him, but the reality is like it's the whole team getting better as the season goes along.
Yes.
The difference between the great teams, the good teams, and the bad teams or average teams is they get better in December as they move forward, assuming that they have health.
Right.
And you see this across the board. There are teams every year that start with these crazy records and it drops off because they're almost incapable of adjusting to whatever their weaknesses are. And you see this with Kansas City. You see it with San Francisco. Us in year one here in Washington, what I think I just really want to see and what I hope to see this year, because I think it's hard to know with a completely new roster and a completely new team, what I hope to see this year is a team that's just kind of going up as the season goes along, that's getting better as it goes along, that's showing the signs that they're here for the long haul. And whatever the record is by the end of the season is whatever it is. But that's the sign to me that things are heading in that kind of direction, because I've seen these other teams that are there in the playoffs every year. And in December and January, it's typically when they become steeled, tougher, and very difficult to beat.
Absolutely. You think about, I think, Detroit a couple years ago, before last season, where they finally made the playoffs. But 2 years prior to that, or the year prior to them making the playoffs, they were on that upswing and that uptick. And even when they lost a bunch of close games and they were still kind of finding ways to lose football games as opposed to finding ways to win football games, that was that type of team that you're describing. I'll tell you what, when I look at the culture, the coaching staff that has been put together by Dan Quinn and Adam Peters and all the other things that are in place, you can't help but be excited about the product that's going to be on that football field. And I tell fans, they ask me all the time, what do I think this team's going to be? I tell you, I think this team is going to be extremely competitive. They're going to be extremely competitive. It's going to be a product that you can be proud of when you'll watch your team. When they watch their team play, win or lose, you will be extremely proud of the effort that they play with and the passion that they play with and the style of play. So I'm looking forward to this, man.
Yeah, it's all talk, obviously, when you hear the coaches say, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. You need to see it put into motion. And that's what I've been watching for in camp and into the preseason. And I'm seeing the signs of it. Like the last two preseason games in the fourth quarter, both games were on the line, right? Trace McSorley's been here 2 days when he plays in the Miami game, and I'll talk about him in a little bit from what he did because that was hometown hero stuff that happened for him the other night against New England. But watch the sideline when they're making big plays at the end of the game. Like everybody is still engaged, part of it. Watch the sideline when Tressway runs down the field and makes a tackle in the first preseason game. Look how engaged everybody is at the end of these games. There's some level of what Quinn's been talking about, which is this, we're going to have a tight-knit locker room. We're going to have fun together. We're going to play really hard. You're going to like the way we play, and we're rooting for one another. We're a team.
Right.
And, I know these are minor little things. It's the preseason, but they matter to me because when I see that, I know that what he's talking about is taking hold here.
Oh, and those things matter. What you talk about describing how the sideline is reacting to plays being made by their teammates, that's when you know you have the right type of culture because guys are excited about other guys making plays. And that's how you build a winning team. That's how when the times get tough, times get hard, it's those moments and when you can rally around each other.
The other one that I'm watching that I see, and I wonder if you see this too, Quinn has talked about this a lot in the summer, where he talks about, I want to hear the defense before I see the defense. The other day in practice, I was out there. Mike Sandistro's a rookie, okay, and clearly ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
And he's going to walk in what looks to be as a starter or a prominent player on the defense immediately.
Right.
And he and Benjamin St. Juste, and he's giving St. Juste directions about what role he needs to play in this specific play on defense. And I'm watching this rookie do this.
Yes.
And I'm seeing the things that they're talking about. This communication between the group, which we know was lacking a year ago. We're seeing it. I'm seeing it. It's building. And I think it's all baked in with all this newness that there's going to be ups and downs. But all these things that he's talking about, like I'm literally seeing. So it is the words are being backed up here by what the players are doing on the field.
Those communication is key especially on the back end of a defense. You have to be all on the same mind wavelength, so to speak, when you're communicating defensively. The fact that whether it's Mikey Sanders-Strill, who's a rookie, or a Jeremy Chin or a Bobby Wagner or whatever, however many years they played in the league, that communication along that back end, because if there's a breakdown or miscommunication or blown assignments, things like that, those things lead to big plays and touchdowns. But that communication, that's what he's talking about, hearing that defense to where we're on the same page, where if Mikey, I wasn't at that practice, so I don't know what was being discussed or whatever, but it was, hey, definitively identifying how we're going to defend a certain route combination or who has which man in the stack or things like that may take place. And this is, somebody has to take lead of that, take charge of that, and it may just simply be, I got him, where there's no gray area. This is all black and white and things like that. So when you hear that type of chatter, that type of communication, that's a sign of a really good defense. And also when I talk about hearing a really good defense, when you hear a swarm of guys rallying to the football, and there were times where you can look at, and we're watching the game, and there's 6, 7, 8 guys in the frame around the ball carrier, or you go back and you watch the film of the game later on, and you can see all your defenders within the frame of that ball carrier.
I haven't talked to you about this yet, but I wonder if this resonates with you. I'm watching Quinn, and we're learning about him, right? And he seems like a very empathetic guy who wants to get to know his players, player-friendly coach, but demanding at the same time. If you watch him, he does want accountability. He does want precision. He does want enthusiasm. At the same time, he wants to get to know you. And I know that you played for one big with Dick Vermeil, who was players coach, really got to know his players. And then you played for Greg Williams, who I also think similarly wanted to get to know his players, but very, very, at least on the outside, different personality.
Extremely different personality.
Quinn feels like he's in the middle of this, where he seems to lean more towards the Vermeil side of being kind of friendly or approachable, but at the same time has that Greg fire in him a little bit.
Yes, yeah, it's a balance. And you talk about Greg, and I started thinking about Greg and some of the things that used to take place with him. But I'll say this: the thing about Dan Quinn, from the moment I heard him in his first press conference, being at the introductory press conference with him being named the head coach, you can see the passion that he has for people. He wants to do this with the right people. So making sure he gets to know his players. You want to coach players hard. I can coach you hard. I can coach you harder when I have a relationship with you. You'll be more willing to accept that hard coaching because I have your best interest at hand. Guys who don't have, or coaches who don't have great relationships with their players, and they coach their players in a hard manner, it might not resonate the way you want to. Some of the players may kind of buff that or push back a little bit, and you may not get exactly what you're accomplishing. But when you have that relationship established, and I can come to you and say, hey, man, I need more from you, or I need you to do this or this and that, and you can be like, okay, I know it's coming from a place that you care for me and you want the best out of me, and I'm going to give you that.
He walks around wearing a T-shirt every day. Believe it if you have to. Hard with good people is the shirt he's wearing every day. That's the message that he's saying out there. I want to get to know you. I want to bring people in I want to work with, but this isn't going to be easy, and we all understand that going into it.
Yeah, and it's the National Football League is tough, man. The fans, we see Sundays, or they see Sundays, or they see game day, and all the glitz and glamours, but the grind of the meetings of the season, it is hard, and you have to have the right people in order to make it through a season and make it through a season and have success.
Yeah, even from my vantage point, like as we talked about earlier, it's an emotional thing just doing these games, being part of it, watching them go through what they go through. if they lose, how disappointing that feels literally to everybody.
Yeah.
Knowing what's happening on social media after something like that and all the criticism that comes along with it, or winning where it's an emotional high that you can't even really describe, and taking that ride along with it, it's a wild journey. And it seems that he understands that the only way, or at least in his view, the only way to do this is we got to be able to have Thanksgiving together. Because if we don't, like, how are we going to get anywhere?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, the best teams that I've been a part of are the closest. We enjoy being each other. We enjoy playing with each other. We enjoyed hanging with each other off the field and just getting to know each other during the offseason. Those are the teams that I felt like we have had our most success.
All right, let's talk about the game last night a little bit.
Let's do that, man. Let's
get through some of that, and then we'll talk about overall how you feel about the preseason. But from last night, let me just ask you broadly, what stood out to you last night from the Commanders?
Well, I think going into that game, there was a lot of that last preseason game. There's a lot of anxiety for a lot of players that are considered on the bubble.
Yeah.
My rookie year, I was a bubble player. That final preseason game, you go into man, you put so much pressure on yourself to go out and perform. For some, that could have been their last opportunity to play in the National Football League. For others, they rise to the occasion. Others fold. I thought guys that kind of were in position battle, so to speak. The defensive tackles, few guys stood out and played extremely well. There were some guys who made it to where the coaches are going to have to agonize over who to keep, whether it's at running back position, defensive tackle, secondary, some of the offensive line, some of the position groups that things are still unsettled, where you want to make these coaches have to agonize and say, man, I want to keep this guy, but I really like this guy. Can we get him through the practice squad? Or do I, just agonizing over those final roster spots? And I thought several guys made great cases for themselves.
On the point of them pressing a little bit, Quinn talked about that Wednesday going into the game. He said he felt it on the practice field, that he could see that there were some guys that were starting to feel the pressure of the moment. And he even said that he spoke to the team at halftime about it and said, let it go. This is, you're playing a half of football, whether it's your first in the next in line here or your last here and somewhere else, let it go. You saw what happened in the second half of the game.
You can tell yourself this is just a game, go out, have fun. It's tough, man. I'm telling you, I've been in that spot. And you want to go out and you just you can overstudy, you can overthink things, it just gets so tight to where you almost paralyze yourself with a paralysis through analysis. You're not able to go out and perform, and then eventually you're able to just exhale, which in the second half I thought some guys really, really made some strong cases for themselves.
You never thought you were going to get cut, did you?
My rookie year, I was undrafted.
Right.
Yeah.
So you walked in knowing that the odds were stacked against you.
Yeah, as an undrafted free agent who was fourth on the depth chart at middle linebacker in the preseason and training camp and all those things. Yeah, there's absolutely a situation where I don't know if I'm going to make this team. My goal going into that training camp or preseason was to make the practice squad. I was a Division III undersized middle linebacker where we may have 12 plays in a period of defense. I might get one snap. I might not get any snaps. So you don't know, or you're playing the first preseason game and you play 3 plays or 6 plays, whatever the case may be. So you don't really know. And going into that fourth preseason game, although I had ascended and moved up to I think third on the depth chart and second as a backup nickel linebacker and playing all the special teams, you still just don't know if you're shown enough. And even after that last game, I played well, so to speak. I played a lot. Played probably 3.5 quarters of that game. All the special teams was exhausted. Had about 14, 15 tackles. But I remember missing about 3 or 4. And I'm thinking, man, I may have just cost myself a roster spot because I missed those.
Because you missed 3 tackles in a preseason game.
Even though I had about 15.
Right.
So that's the kind of anxiety that you have.
Were your coaches communicating with you throughout the process, or were they letting you guess whether you were safe or not?
My linebacker coach told me, he said, hey, London, the way you're going to make this team is going to be as a nickel linebacker. So, playing the nickel sub defense.
So they told you what you needed to do.
And he also said special teams. Like I wasn't going to make the team, so to speak, as a middle linebacker. I was going to be making a team as for special teams and as a sub linebacker, nickel backer. Even though I felt like I was the best middle linebacker on the team.
Okay, so is that hard to hear? When someone says to you?
For me, I was weird because I thought I was the best middle linebacker on the team, even though I was 4th on the depth chart. I don't know if it's just me and my ego or confidence, because I'm like, man, I'm making more plays than these guys. But for him to say that to me, I was like, dang, you're not even looking at me as a true middle linebacker. You're looking at me as a backup linebacker and also a special teamer. So it was good on his part to let me know, hey, you really need to focus in and lock in on this element of it.
Yeah.
But, I still was like, man, I want to be a starter.
Yeah.
So and this was later, and this was probably maybe going into the 3rd preseason game. He may have told me that.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like early in the process.
But at least they're telling you at that point, hey, you can make the team.
Yeah.
This is how you're going to do it.
This is how you're going to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's perfect segue into a couple players here.
Yeah.
Like, let's see, what direction should we go? The undrafted free agent, Tyler Owens, or the established player, Jamin Davis, who's being asked to do things that he hadn't been asked to do in his career? Let me start with Owens, since it seems to be somewhat akin, right? Here's a guy who's been flashing in camp, standing out, making plays on special teams, did it again against the Patriots, but the odds are stacked against him. Go look at the safety group. It's one of the deepest on this team. So as you kind of think about him and his story and what he's done, what comes to mind about Owens?
Well, I think first and foremost, he's taken advantage of every opportunity he's been given going back, from the OTAs and minicamp. He continues to make plays. You go to the first preseason game, he made plays as a gunner on special teams. So I told you, first, the number one and fastest way you want to make a team as an undrafted guy or a rookie, special teams. Show that your value. He's covering kicks. He's showing his ability to do that. And then when you get your opportunities in base defense show up, he's shown up. We can think of a couple times in the Miami Dolphins game. He showed up making plays. So he's putting himself in great position to have the coaches like, man, he's in that mix. You mentioned Jamin Davis, playing a new position, being a off-the-ball linebacker to now being asked to be a rush defensive end. That's a big jump. Rushing the passer is totally different than being a blitzer. It's a different skill set. You got to learn how to rush tackles and work on your moves. I think Jamin has embraced that, and you can see him getting better each and every week. Yesterday, he made some more plays at that defensive end position. The game against the Dolphins, he did some great job. He did a great job, got the sack, but also just making plays that defensive ends need to make if you're going to play in the National Football League.
So let me go back to the coach told you need to do these specific things to make this team, which is, I don't think that's the exact wording that they're saying to Jamin Davis, but they're asking him to do this. The willingness to do it, the enthusiasm to do it, seems to go a long way for him if you listen to the coaches, that they're willing to be patient and, learn with him as he goes along in this process. But if he had pushed back at all, I'm not sure we'd be having this conversation about it.
They'd probably be, maybe looking to move him. Because if he's not truly embracing that role, he's not going to give full effort, and he's not going to be the best version of himself. So it wouldn't work out. It wouldn't work out for him. But the fact that he's been open and willing to say, all right, this is how you all see me being able to contribute to this ball club, and let me work hard at it. working on your craft with the coaches, the position coaches, whether it's Daryl Tapp and also Ryan Kerrigan, and then just working each and every day to get better and truly embracing that.
As you think about it, what he's been trying to do from the spring until now, how difficult is it to ask him to do the things that he's doing at the NFL level?
Extremely difficult. I will say this, it's great that he's still relatively young making that switch. This is his 4th year. And the reason I say him being relatively young, it makes me think about when Andre Carter was here. Andre Carter was a rush defensive end in a 4-3 defense for probably his first 9 or 10 years in the NFL. Well, I'll take this back. He was drafted as a San Francisco. He was a 3-4 outside backer. Wasn't great at it. They went to a 4-3. He excelled at a 4-3 defensive end, especially here. Coach Shanahan comes here. We switched to a 34 defense. Dre was coming off an outstanding year in 2009 as a pass rusher. 2010, go to that 3-4 defense. They asked Dre to be a stand-up outside linebacker.
I remember this.
It was a difficult transition to him because he's a lot older. It was a difficult transition. It didn't work out well for Dre. Then he ended up going to New England, made the Pro Bowl as a 4-3 defensive end, again, being back in his home position. So it's youth helps. Dre was willing to do it, but his body style just didn't work out for him.
And it hurts when he's someone who's getting a big contract.
Yes.
Fans are putting a lot of pressure on him.
Yep.
If he's not making the plays, it gets emphasized over and over. And in Jamin's case, he's a first-round pick. So everybody's watching everything he's doing, and they're putting a major spot. Like Tyler Owens, an undrafted free agent. He's a great story, right? He's emerging here. Jamin needs to live up to this potential, and that's where the outside noise is difficult.
He has to be Michael Parsons-esque, so to speak, for the fans to be like, oh, man, he's living up to the billing. He has to be getting constant pressure on the quarterback, stopping a run, doing all these things, getting sacks and all that. That thing doesn't just switch. The switch doesn't just switch just like that. You have to go through the process, and he's going through that process.
All right, last thing on Jamin. A lot of players did not play last night. When asked about it, Dan Quinn said, you're barking up the right tree that these guys are pretty much safe to be on the roster for the initial 53-man roster. He did play last night. Do you read anything into that?
The thing I read into it is he's playing a new position. They want to get him as many reps as possible at that position. So that's what when he's playing into the fourth quarter, he's raw. He's playing a new position. Let's get him as many reps as possible playing that new position. I don't read into it any more than that.
Okay. So that's going to be an interesting decision because it's a very heavy group there. They did draft Javonte Jean-Baptiste, and KJ Henry's had a very nice camp as well, had a sack in the New England game. So the edge rush, it's interesting choices. They spent money on Dorrance Armstrong. You know he is safe here. Dante Fowler comes in from Dallas. So there's not room for everybody. So this is going to be an interesting group that they have to think about.
And DQ has also said that they've also still gotten Jamin some opportunities at linebacker, and maybe in practice and the meetings and things like that. But he still has that versatility to still be a linebacker off the ball for them. Especially, we don't know how the McGee situation, how long Jordan McGee will be out injured. I don't think it's truly settled at who will be the number 3 linebacker at the inside linebacker position. You know, is that person currently on our roster? Is it somebody, some moves still to be made? Is it Jamin? Things like that. So we don't know those things, so that's why they still have that ability to play Jamin at both.
On McGee, who has a knee injury and is unlikely to be ready by week 1, there was a rule shift this year. You can put 2 players on IR before announcing the 53-man roster, and they can come back. That used to not be the case.
Okay.
You used to have to put somebody on 53, then put them on IR.
Yeah.
So you kind of lose a roster spot for a day or 2 while you do that. They changed this for 2 players. I don't know if McGee's going to fall into that category for them, but they can use that mechanism and put short-term IR on him and still have 53 other players on the roster. Great so it's an option for them.
Great rule. It's crazy because some of these things, the NFL is like, man, this just seems like common sense type thing where let's put these guys on the IR and hopefully they'll get beyond just 2 players because I'm sure there's probably, 4 or 5 guys that could be
The object was to stop the wealthy teams from stashing players. That's all it was. That's all it was. It was like, you can't put a bunch of guys on IR just to keep them away from everybody else, is all it was. That's all it was.
Man, don't penalize me because I've drafted well or I've acquired good football players.
All right, let's go back to safety then. Right, that's a position group where I think they got a lot of thinking to do, especially with the emergence of Owens. How are you thinking about that group?
Man, I love that safety group. You like a lot of versatility, a lot of playmakers.
Might be the strongest on the team.
Yeah, you bringing in Jeremy Chin, his ability to play the middle of the field, be down in the box. You can probably have him as a kind of a Buffalo nickel type of guy. Quinn and his versatility. Then you got Butler. Percy Butler has played extremely well. I think he's been a guy that has really ascended under his new coaching staff. I know he started a lot of games last year, but you could see him playing at an even higher level in the preseason. Jeremy Reeves is taking advantage of his opportunity. Derek Forrest, who was a 4-interception guy a couple years ago.
Yeah.
He's in that mix. I mean, you look at all those guys. And then Tyler Owens. I mean, Dominic Hampton. There's some players in that group, man. They're gonna have some tough choices to make in that safety group.
Feels like Hampton being moved into more of a linebacker position was partially, it might be a skill set move for him, and partially might be safety is so crowded that it was going to be difficult for him to make the team in that group, which is, these are the good decisions that you have to make. If you have too many players that you like and you have to make very, very difficult decisions about them, you work the roster around the best way you can to keep as many people as you want.
Yeah, and Hampton, he's shown the ability to do both. Great size with 6'2", 6'3", 220 pounds. When he played the middle linebacker position or the linebacker position, didn't look out of position. There's some some rawness in that he'll gain from just experience of playing that position. He had a little tug on a play, a pass interference against the Dolphins, and that's just him, getting a little bit more seasoned, and it's easily correctable. So he showed the ability to be able to play the linebacker spot, but also in that same game against the Dolphins, he went back and played safety.
Yeah.
So to be able to, you almost get a 2-for-1 with him. Again, it's going to be a tough choice to how many safeties you keep. Do you keep 4? Do you keep 5? I don't know. I'm excited to see how this roster takes place, but there'll be some good football players that don't make this initial 53 or the 53-man roster, and that's just the reality of this business.
How about the corner position as well? I think someone we were watching last night and has really emerged through campus, Tariq Castro-Fields. He's had a very nice camp for them, and I think he's made things very difficult on them to make a decision, as that group seems pretty deep now as well.
Yeah, Tariq, he really jumped off the screen for me last week against the Dolphins. You got, Chig Anuzium. He's making plays, undrafted guy, kid out of Colorado State. You got Igbenogany.
I've been practicing it for 3 months.
You know what? If I'm looking at it, I can say Igbenogany. He's another guy. Those cornerbacks, I mean, I don't know how many corners you keep. Like, are you keeping 5 corners as well? So it's again, good football, a lot of good football players in that group. I thought Emmanuel Forbes has ascended. Forbes has gotten a lot of criticism, but just if you watch him carefully and looking at him, I feel like he's gotten better.
They've acknowledged that, and you know what? This one is turning into a classic. What everybody is saying about him on the outside, I don't think is how they feel about him on the inside.
Yeah.
Like, there's a couple of things that really stand out about this, and this is partially just proximity that I have and being here all the time and watching. His teammates love him.
Yeah.
Like, and that matters. Like, his teammates love him, right? Just go watch. Go check out social media if you want to see it, the things that they're posting. But I'm telling you, like, he's got nicknames around here. He is friends with everybody here. And the coaches have gone out of their way when his name gets brought up and don't think they don't know that the questions come from a place of, he's this first-round pick who's might be undersized and got burned a couple times last year. Like, they know where this is coming from, and they're answering it very, very succinctly, like, we like what he's doing here right now. I think they look at him and they go, okay, like, he's never going to be the biggest guy, right? But the reason why he's here, why he was drafted in the first place, and the reason why this team is going to like him and want him here is they value getting the ball. And the guy who might get the ball the most on this defense is him.
Yeah.
He can run. He's fast. He's got good instincts. If you get his confidence up to play in the system the way you want him to, he will jump routes. And when the ball comes his way, he catches it.
He catches balls.
He catches it. So I think that they think that there is an upside still on him and that he's not as unsafe or in any kind of territory that the outside, noise of Twitter and social media kind of thinks there is.
Yeah, it is a situation where every player gives up a play. If you're on that field, you're between those white lines, you're going to give up plays. Offensive player is going to give up a play. A left tackle is going to give up a sack. A cornerback's going to give up a touchdown. That's just the nature of the business. His is so magnified because of last season, which I don't think it was a fair assessment of him. And, I'm not going to touch on that too much because it's a new day. But just watching him, the technique, the things that you can tell he's being coached the right way. He's going out and trying to carry what he's learned on the practice field and carrying it over on game day. I look forward to just watching him continue to get better because, he's a young football player playing the most difficult position on the defense and maybe possibly even with the exception of cornerback in the National Football League may be the hardest position to play.
Yeah, and, this is biased. We're here all the time. I'm rooting for them. Obviously, I want them to win, and I want the best for them. But when I see somebody who's getting criticized the way he gets criticized, and he does the interviews every time, he says the right things, he's respectful, he stand up, I can see how his teammates feel about him. It is hard not to root for him. I feel similarly about Dami Brown through this camp. Yeah. Dami got a lot of criticism. I think part of it was he just wasn't given opportunities in the past. All of a sudden, he's getting them here in this camp. But what I noticed a couple years ago was when they told him, we need you on punt coverage, he went and did it willingly. And when you watch him on run plays, the way he blocks, it is no surprise to me that he is emerging as someone who's going to have a prominent role here because he plays this physical style. He's willing to do all these things. Maybe the ball start flying his way and he can start to potentially make some catches again. But I get it. And he falls in this category too. He wasn't a first-round pick, but he was a high draft pick. And everybody's going, what's up with this guy? Why isn't he making all these plays? We expect him to do it. Well, it's happening now, and it's hard not to be happy for these guys when you see them put in the work, do it the right way, because this league is hard. It's going to humble people fast. I don't care what round pick you are, but when they start to have success and you see the coaches getting behind them, their teammates behind them, it's hard not to really enjoy what's happening with them.
Yeah, and some guys, it just takes a little bit longer for you to develop at that level. Thing I like, and I've noticed about Dami is he's not just a deep ball guy any longer or viewed as that because he has such great deep balls speed that, you want to get him going deep, but he's shown the ability to catch contested passes, whether it's a hitch ball or there was a curl route that he ran against the New York Jets, and he's showing more routes in his route tree, the wide receiver screen and catching that ball and not being timid or whatever, catching it and getting upfield like a punt returner on that wide receiver screen. So he's showing more versatility to his game, and that when you can do that and you have that type of speed, the ball will find you because defenses are going to have to respect you a lot more.
All these issues you can hear, of course, on the Command Center podcast, which is a People's Choice Podcast Awards nominee. Hopefully next year ours will be as well. We can compete with them.
That's the goal. That's the goal.
We're coming for you, Command Center podcast.
Hey, Dan Quinn has a culture of competition. We're competing against the Command Center
podcast competition.
I'm kind of on the Command Center podcast too. So can I really lose? I don't know. No, I'm not on that one. I'm on there a little bit, but I'm not a.
Not enough to be on their side.
No, it's competition.
Yes.
It's
all
competition.
right. One more player I want to focus in from last night. So Chris Paul's been playing a lot at right tackle through the summer. Played extensively, at least 3 quarters last night at right tackle. Yes. What do you make? He was predominantly a guard. What do you make of what's going on with him?
Well, Chris is he surprised me, and obviously he hasn't surprised the coaches because they put him out there. Because when you look at him, you get caught up. You don't think right tackle body. You don't think tackle body, but the way he's put together, you think, hey, this is a guard. But his ability to go out there and block defensive ends, he's done a really good job, man. Showing that versatility helps too. If you're not a starter on the offensive line, the more you can do it. He's shown the ability to play guard. He's shown the ability to play tackle. I don't know, heck, he may even be able to play center. So if you can play all 5 spots in the NFL and play all 5 spots on the offensive line, that bodes well for you. But I've been pleasantly surprised with the way Chris Paul has performed outside of tackle.
I mean, it feels a little bit like what we were talking about earlier when you said your coaches told you what you needed to do to make the team, that it feels like a little bit, get out there on the edge. We need to see you perform out there. That is your path to making this team probably as a swing tackle backup guard on the team.
That's it, man. If you can do both, especially say you're a backup lineman and you only can play guard. I mean, nothing wrong with that, but you limit. If you're competing with a guy who can play guard and tackle, you're going to probably keep the guy who can play guard and tackle, all things being equal, so to speak. So the more you can do, you create value for yourself on that ball club.
One more person for last night. We have to give the flowers to Trace McSorley, who
grew
up in Ashburn, right? And like we were talking about earlier, I feel like I have the greatest job in the world in broadcasting. I get to call the games of this incredible franchise that's 90-plus years old that I grew up going to games at RFK at, and I wouldn't want any other job. You know, and it's amazing. Every time I get to do it, I'm privileged and honored to do it. He got to put on black, but burgundy and gold, right?
Yeah. And last week you wore burgundy and gold.
Yeah, and there he was.
I don't even know what color we wore in Miami.
I don't remember now either. I think so.
Was it burgundy?
Burgundy tops?
No, I think it was white. I don't know.
Like I said, information dump on Monday when it's over. You just forget it all.
White in Miami.
I don't remember.
White burger.
We'll have to look it up. Anyway,
long time ago.
He's in a home game, leading 2 fourth-quarter touchdown drives, trucks a cornerback, gets the sideline going nuts for him. So whatever his future is, here or not here, whatever it may be, like I know he's been around the league. I know he's been drafted. He's played for a number of teams. So this wasn't new to be on an NFL field, but there had to be something to putting on those colors, walking into that stadium. And I know it's a preseason game, but leading game-winning fourth-quarter drives in the burgundy and gold for a kid who grew up in Ashburn, that must have been amazing last night.
Yeah, it was. I got to interview him last night on the post-game show, and I asked him, about that. What was it like for you growing up out here in Ashburn and being able to play a game, in the at Commander Stadium for your hometown team, and being able to perform the way he performed? And he's like, man, it was a surreal type of moment for him to be able to do that. There was a picture posted recently today on social media of him as a kid at a training camp. Just being at one of the Redskins training camp back then, but being at one of our training camps, and that's to be able to do that.
He's got a picture with you. You signing an autograph for him?
I did have a teammate who I signed an autograph for when I was playing. He was a kid back in the day. That showed you how old I was, still playing. But for him to have that moment and play the way he played, I know that had to feel really good.
I mean, for this preseason, what I'm going to remember is him, doing what he did. He'd been here for 2 days when he played in the first game, shows up here. That moment where he trucked this cornerback and the sideline goes crazy. So here's, think about the first preseason game. Tressway, who's been here longer than anybody else, might go in the Ring of Fame, one of the best punters this organization's ever had. Great guy, too. He throws his body on the line in the second half of a preseason game against the Jets, and the place goes nuts. And here's a guy who's been here a week, and it matters to him. And I think that's the infectiousness that I think we hope we're seeing across the board. The guy who shouldn't be throwing his body around to the other guy doing it in the uniform. That's what I think Dan Quinn and Adam Peters want. That's what we want to see. And it was amazing to see here's somebody who's fighting for a role in the NFL. Here's another guy who is perfectly safe because he's the only punter on the roster and he's annually a Pro Bowl punter. And they're doing the same thing at the same points in time in preseason games that don't count in the standings. Tells you everything you need to know what's going on here.
There's a saying, they don't count, but they matter. Yeah, they don't count from a record standpoint, big picture regular season record, but they matter. Every time you step between those white lines, it matters. You talk about autograph. You're autographing your work, good or bad. With every single performance you have, you're putting your autograph, your signature. You're saying, hey, this is my work. Are you proud of that work? Or are you like, that wasn't my best? That's the standard that you have to play to. Understanding, I'm signing my name to this work, this performance. Am I going to be proud of it?
The one other thing that happened last night that I thought was good for the players who did play for the Commanders was the Patriots are still in a starting quarterback race, and Drake May and Jacoby Brissett played last night. So you got to see essentially the starting offense for the Patriots for a full half last night, and I'll tell you, Drake May looked pretty good.
Drake May looked really good, and I don't know what the decision is going to be up in New England. I know when you got to look at everything, how these guys looked in practice, how they looked in the prior preseason games, from the game last week that the Patriots had to last night. Drake May's looked really, really good at the quarterback position. I know earlier they were talking about, hey, he might not be necessarily ready, but, not being ready going against the New England Patriots defense in practice, that the Patriots defense is going to be one of the best in the NFL. They're always one of the top. Consistently a really good defense.
For the last 5 years, top 10 in defense, Mayo's been on the staff with Bill Belichick. So, it's going to carry over.
Yeah, May not looking good against that defense, especially early in the process, doesn't surprise me, as he's probably gotten more experience. He's probably looked a little bit better in practice, and then you carry that over with some of the performances that he had in the preseason, including last night's game against us. It might end up being Drake May starting week 1 for the Patriots.
I mean, I can't imagine on their Twitter last night, after the things I saw, that they weren't literally demanding it. I mean, the one play that got called back, the touchdown to KJ Osborne, where he rolled out to his left, so he's throwing, off his opposite foot, a strike down the field. The guy was wide open, but still, it was 40 yards down the field. He got called back for a penalty. I mean, those are the moments where you go, and this is why we selected him number 3 overall.
No, Drake threw the football extremely well, on time, had great ball placements on some of the routes, and you mentioned athleticism. He ran for, I think, a couple first downs, or at least I know one first down, showed that athleticism. He's not Jaden Daniels athletic, but he is.
But he's mobile.
Yeah, he's athletic enough and mobile enough. And, think about this. There was a big question going into the draft, big conversation. Jaden Daniels, Drake May, who are we taking number 2? I always thought Jaden Daniels was the guy. I mean, just that from my vantage point of watching Jaden Daniels in college, watching, what he brought to the table and the type of stress he would cause on the defense with his skill set. I like, man, this is the guy that I would take, But I thought Drake May looked really, really good in that ball game.
It was funny last night. I'll name drop here for a minute. I got to talk to Mike Tirico, for our pregame show.
You can name drop.
Yeah, I'll name drop a little bit. So I talked to Mike Tirico last night. I'll ask you the same question I asked him because, 4 years ago, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Mac Jones, 5 quarterbacks, top 15. Similarly, this year, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Michael Penix, Bo Nix. 3 of the 5 are definitively starting. Daniels, Williams, and now Bo Nix has been named. Right. I think Drake May is going to be starting sooner rather than later, so 4 out of the 5. And if Kirk Cousins wasn't in Atlanta, they loving what Penix is doing, he would be starting too. But that year, 4 years ago, only one of those guys still on the same team. Do you think this one's different than that one? Because Caleb, what we saw from May, what we've seen from Daniels, this does feel different. Like this is a class that's going to be remembered.
It feels different from the talent-wise. I think this year's class is more talented than that class 4 years ago. But I also think situations of each franchise, comparing those franchises back 4 years ago to the franchises that these teams are all going to. I think the situations are a lot better and the infrastructure is a lot better for the 2024 group of quarterbacks. You know, you think about Caleb Williams in a situation that the circumstance that he's going into Chicago now, as opposed to the situation that Justin Fields went into during Chicago 4 years ago. Much different situation. I would say this situation.
Fields is probably like, give me DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Rome Odunze, and let's see what I would do with that.
The situation that Jaden Daniels has coming in here, everything's new. Dan Quinn is the head coach. Cliff Kingsbury's offense. I mean, all the things. This situation's a lot better than probably Zach Wilson went into in New York, several years ago. And we can go on and on about the other guys. So I just think the talent is better, first and foremost, with this group of quarterbacks, but also the situations are better as well.
I mean, nothing's a certainty. I mean, New England is picking a quarterback again. New England is in that group. Mac Jones is not there, and New England was a dynasty. Yeah. So, look, like it's not like they didn't know what they were doing up there. So we'll have to see how it plays out.
Bo Nix has Sean Payton as his play caller.
Yep.
I think Mac Jones in his second year had Matt Patricia as his play caller.
Yeah.
Matt Patricia was a heck of a defensive play caller. I don't know about him as an offensive play caller. So just the situations and circumstances matter.
Jaden Daniels played 3 series in the preseason. He's going to be the starter in a couple of weeks against Tampa Bay. I assume you saw enough?
Oh, yeah, I saw enough, man. I saw plenty. Man, the kid he's so talented. But his approach is what you appreciate the most. The work ethic, the humility, the embracing the grind and the requirements that it takes to be a quarterback in the National Football League. That requirement is unlike any in all of sport. There's not a harder position in sport than quarterback. The hours, the mental preparation, the physical preparation that it takes, and he's, as a rookie, is willing to put in those hours physically, mentally, emotionally, that it takes to be great. He's doing those things, and then you see what he's been able to do from a talent standpoint so far in his career. In this his young career, the sky's the limit.
Next Man Up podcast, by the way, had him as a guest recently with Doug Williams and
dope.
Brian Colbert Jr. So you've got Doug, who Jaden wore his jersey to the first game. I thought that was really cool when he did that. And, of course, Doug was a star quarterback with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers before he ended up winning a Super Bowl with Washington. So a lot of synergy there as Jaden plays his first game in Tampa in the hopes that maybe we'll have another Super Bowl MVP quarterback one of these days. Not to put too much pressure on him, but
let's just
we could dream a little bit here, right? We could dream a little bit here. All right, last thing. Preseason's done. What did you take from camp in the preseason as they head into the regular season?
You know, I took the fact that, Dan Quinn came in here. He talked about you're going to appreciate our play style and the way we play football and certain physicality, speed, cultures, all those things.
You saw that?
I saw that. I saw that type of play style. And just think when we see the starting defense out there collectively, I think we're going to see that at an even heightened level. And, when you see Bobby Wagner out there flying around, making plays and doing those types of things, there's been a lot of roster turnover. The guys that, over 30-something players on this team could be new.
It's going to be something in that number.
They've made this a more competitive roster. I look forward to seeing all this stuff kind of come together, especially in week 8, 9, 10. See how much further along we'll be as opposed to week 1, 2, and 3.
I mean, what was amazing was back in the spring, Dan Quinn shuffled the lockers around. They're not standing next to each other by position group anymore because he was just acknowledging this is all new for everybody.
Yes.
Get used to the new normal around here. These are your new teammates. And I'll go back to what I saw on the sidelines at the ends of these preseason games, what I've seen in practice. There's just a general enthusiasm and camaraderie that has really grown. And that's very promising. Like, I don't know what that means for what their record's going to be, but what they're saying, they said is going to happen culturally, you see the signs of it. And that's really positive.
It really is. And, man, I can't wait to see week 1 down in Tampa Bay, see how it all unfolds. You and I will get to talk about it. We'll get to call a game, but then we'll also get to kind of regroup the next day and on this podcast and talk about it again.
All right, last thing. They're telling me in promotional materials, and even on this sheet of paper that I have, that you are Big Fletch for this podcast.
Yeah.
Is that?
Oh, yeah.
I've been calling you London for 2.5 years. I didn't know I was supposed to call you Big Fletch.
Oh, Big Fletch. Yeah, that's my alter ego.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want that in the booth or just here?
Booth 2. Hey,
Noted.
Listen, you want me to go to another level, call me Big Fletch. You see that London, that's Big Fletch. Oh, he's the guy.
All right, we'll see. We'll see how liberally we use that, and then we'll see if Logan gets jealous and needs a nickname himself.
I don't know what we're gonna call Logan. Big Country. I don't know.
We'll have to see. All right, this was fun.
Yeah,
All right, look forward.
Man.
We'll do this next week. We'll focus ahead to the regular season in Tampa Bay. This has been Booth Review. I'm Bram Weinstein. That's Big Fletch.